Welcome back to the Pop Astrologist Presents. This week I have a very special guest, Maria of Persephonic Tarot in the house. What's up, girl?
Hello. Hi, Tasha. I'm so excited to be here today.
We had such a good time on your podcast, past, present, future cast. So I thought let's run it back again. And this time we're going to be talking about someone who I would say you're a huge fan of. I am a casual fan of, but now that I have done some research into her, I can consider myself, yes, give me more. This week we are talking about none other than Halsey. Baby, pull me closer.
Halsey. Baby, pull me
Halsey.
closer in the backseat of your Rover. And I am from Tucson, Arizona, where, we beat to death that Blink 182 song. I had my very first viral post on
Mm.
Instagram was me just being reminiscing on when that song came out, which
Yeah.
is Closer by the Chainsmokers featuring Halsey. It came out in, I think, 2016, and I was studying abroad in Ireland. And I was at the pubs every night, and every night that song would come on, and I was like, I'm from Tucson! That's about my home! And I made a post about that a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, and it went viral. And then Halsey commented on it, and I
I
was
saw that!
girl, hello, I love you. So this has been super fun to research, and it's been serving as prep for me to go see her on her current tour in
Mm-hmm.
just a few weeks. I'm
Oh,
so excited.
you're gonna see her literally, I think, on that Scorpio full moon too, which is
What's
banging
happened? That's going to be major for her. As we're going to see
major
in
for
her
her.
chart, that full moon
Hmm.
is going to be huge for her. So I can't wait to see how the show goes.
Yeah. So before we bring up Halsey, well, we already know your bias. You love Halsey. But why don't you let people know what your big three is so we know the astrological or intuitive bias you're working with here?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I am a Libra sun. I have a pretty big Libra stellium in my seventh house. And then I'm a double Aries. So Aries moon and rising.
Mm.
And that moon and rising are ruled by Mars conjunct Scorpio in, no, Mars conjunct Pluto in Scorpio in my eighth house. So
Ooh.
heavily Mars ruled here, as is our girl Halsey.
As is, yes, this is a Mars ruled crew right here because I'm a Scorpio rising as well. I have Pluto on my ascendant, so this really is a conversation rooted in Mars and Scorpio, because Halsey actually happens to have a very, very intense Scorpio stellium, not unlike Katy Perry, which is also very interesting because I feel like, both of them, well, I guess Katie has been going through a hard time in the media, right? Like she had to just recently come out with, these fans are unhealed on the internet, which is hilarious. But we're not going to go there. You can definitely check that episode out. But with Halsey, it's interesting because she's almost like not to say on a comeback tour, right? She's like come back from an absence and a
Yeah.
much needed absence. She's been, if people who aren't privy to what's been happening to Halsey, she's been gone for the last couple of years. She's only last year started to really come back into music. And initially when she came back, there was like some backlash off the bat.
Yes.
Do you know what any of that was about? Why were people so angry? Or why was there backlash even?
So I saw a little bit of it. Some of it, let's see. I had pulled out a quote from Halsey. So when
Hmm.
she started to come back, her second to last album was released in 2021, and then this
Hmm.
most recent album wasn't released until 2024. And she didn't have a lot going on in between because, as we're going to talk about, she was dealing with some major health issues. She got some pretty major diagnoses and basically almost died,
Hmm.
according to her own words. And
I
when
believe
she,
her. I believe her.
absolutely, yeah. And when she came back, I think some of the music was very different than what she had
Mm.
previously been releasing. And she put out a Tumblr post, uh, because there was this backlash, and she posted on Tumblr and then promptly deleted it. But it
Mm.
said, one of the quotes said, "My own fans are hands down meaner to me than any other person on the planet. I want to crawl in a hole and I regret coming back." Which is so sad to have this absence that was like a forced absence due to basically being deeply, deeply ill, and then to come back with an extremely personal set of songs. The two songs that she released before the album came out were The End. She said we're
Hmm.
going to start at the end, and that song, I cry every time I listen to that song, because it is really about the health struggles. Like the last line is something like, um, it's her like really sweet singer-songwriter, and she says, um, but can you pick me up today because my treatment starts at 8? Or can you pick me up at 8 because my treatment starts today? And thinking about how she was having to go through these like really intense treatments. But she also put out Lucky, which a lot of folks
Hmm.
have probably heard. This is the song that samples Lucky by Britney Spears. The chorus is basically the same, just slightly
Yes.
rewritten, but it's really about her own issues being in the spotlight and her, gosh, she says, um, became a single mom at my career, told everybody I was fine for a whole damn year. That's the biggest lie of my career. And what I thought was really interesting, just from a pop culture perspective, because we know Britney has been
Hmm.
released from her imprisonment, essentially.
Right. It,
And
ish. I don't
ish,
know. It's
ish.
debatable what's happening these days, but ish.
We know Britney's been able to talk a little more publicly, a little more
Hmm.
freely, and it was confirmed that she did get permission to sample Lucky. Of course,
Hmm.
you have to get that legal permission, yada
Yeah.
yada. But when that music video came out, Britney posted that she was like deeply upset. She felt like she was being harassed and attacked because of that song, which
Mm.
I think was a massive misunderstanding. I think Britney saw the song as being about her when it was actually about Halsey's own journey. She deleted the post, posted that someone else had had her phone to post that, and then said that she loved Halsey. So that was an interesting little drama that happened initially.
Right. I remember that. I remember thinking I saw the movie. I saw the trailer of the music
Mhm.
video when it came out, or like a snapshot of it,
Which was
with the
directed by Gia Coppola, by the way, the music
yes.
video.
It's a actually beautiful music video. It is very Gia Coppola. If you've never seen her stuff, like it is the last showgirl type of energy. It is very nostalgic, but feminine, but very dark, like
Yeah.
underneath it all. It's very dark. And in the song, basically, Halsey talks about the loneliness she experiences as a kid, and you kind of see the mirroring in the relationships throughout her life, essentially. And then, she's like Swarovski Enochiai type of, like I guess I don't even remember the image, but she's almost like naked, like
Yeah.
fully naked.
Reminiscent of the Britney
Yes.
bodysuit, like
Yes.
crystal bodysuit, similar look. She was definitely
Hmm.
visually referencing Britney in the song too as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Brittany is I think a Libra rising, if I am not mistaken, because she's got a very loaded third house Sagittarius stellium. So, on some level, I can kind of see a little bit of the, not to say like self-centeredness, but Brittany has had to navigate so much over the years, right? And people harassing her. Like she can't even dance on Instagram without people being like she's mentally unwell. And
Yeah.
so, it would make sense that there's the natural defensiveness that comes through and the controversy around that. But what was I found really interesting, she had posted, I think, the end, or like she almost given fans like a preview of,
Yes.
like this is what I've been dealing with. And it was like such a shock to a lot of people who weren't familiar. But that came out, I think, on like June 3rd, June 4th, like last summer. So in the middle
Hmm.
of Brat's summer, okay, we had this other thing going on because there was a lot about music, a lot of music, pop, girly anthems that were coming through. But Halsey's voice was also coming through, but maybe not picked up in the mainstream in such a way than other people. But she did drop it on June 3rd, June 4th, which the
Hmm.
transits on that date were interesting because there was a Venus Cazimi, I believe, in Gemini
Um,
that day. There was Mercury conjunct Jupiter. There was like a lot about like let's chat, let's talk about it, let's like get news information out there. And when you think about Gemini, of course, right, like there is a tendency maybe to not necessarily be understood because you're like kind of like throwing out all these ideas, you're throwing out all these data points, and people like have no idea what to like grasp onto. And so, with Jupiter and Gemini last year, and this was in Halsey's eighth house, where it is all about stuff we don't talk about,
Mm,
right? It could have
yeah.
maybe come as this powerful sort of, oh, knock yourself or knock your fans off their rockers type of energy, because it is really deep what she's saying, and there is an actual emotional depth here, unlike Katy Perry stuff.
Yes, that's a huge difference between these two artists is the
Mm-hmm.
the relatability, the actual personal connection with fans, and then the art that's being put out,
Mm-hmm.
women's
Mm-hmm.
world versus the end.
The end.
It's,
The
it's
way
I
I'm laughing, because it's literally like we are living in two different realities, right? For some people, this really feels like the end. And for some other people, this is a woman's world. It just really depends on what side of the aisle you also are on. But
exactly.
nevertheless, Scorpio, when you have an intense Scorpio stellium on some level, you kind of, I don't want to say are like the public receptacle for trash, but like on some level, you are a public punching bag,
Yeah.
because admittedly, Scorpio is always going to deal with the darker side of life and the hard, hard truth where the sun don't shine, where the sun don't shine. There we go.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you know what I mean? You know what I mean? You're a Mars Pluto person. You get it.
And where the sun don't shine, Halsey's sun does shine because she has her sun in the 12th house.
Boom.
Yeah.
Introduction, Halsey. I mean,
Look at
whew,
that Scorpio. What house
whew.
is Katy Perry's Scorpio stellium in? I'm
It's all
curious.
first house as well.
It's also the first house.
Yes,
Wow.
that's why it's such a
Okay.
compelling, like I didn't even realize this when I was doing research, because the Katy Perry stuff just happened so like, okay, I know I gotta do a show on Katy Perry and the Blue Origin stuff. But then I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm just literally about to talk about Halsey, and I'm talking about another Scorpio stellium person who also had to battle some controversy, although not in the same way as
Yeah.
Katy Perry is, because Halsey is also going through her Saturn return right now. So this is
Ah,
kind of like, oh,
yes.
she's almost done. She's almost done. She's almost done.
Her and I both.
The Saturn and Pisces crew is deep exhaling like
Yeah.
over the next month, because Saturn will officially move into Aries at the end of May. It will still dip a toe back into Pisces, but for all intents and purposes, the Saturn return for the Saturn and Pisces generation is formally concluding. God bless. How was
Thank
that? How
God.
was that for you, actually?
It was not as bad for me as I thought it was going to be. I
Hmm.
have Saturn in the 12th house, and if we're talking about Hellenistic astrology, which I'll say is my background, more or
Hmm.
less, it is Saturn is not on my sect. I have a night chart. Saturn is in the day sect, so I was
Mm.
expecting the worst, and I did have some major that Saturn rules my 11th and my 10th house, so I had a lot of issues going on with my community, my friends, and the
Mm.
intermingling with my career. But at the end of the day, I started my podcast. My podcast was my Saturn return story and has been quite successful so far. So
Oh
I'm
my
happy
gosh.
about it.
That's amazing. Definitely go check out Past, Present, Future Cast. I'll keep it in the show notes below.
Thank you.
But also, you've been working on some really important things in your local community, as you just mentioned, which I would love to hear you talk a little bit about closer to the end of the episode.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
But going back to Halsey, now this was obviously a brutal Saturn return for Halsey,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, lay of the land, first of all. Libra sun, as you said, hidden, very private 12th house, Scorpio rising, and a Cancer moon. And I mean, if you just take that big three, you think about like someone nurturing, you think about someone fiercely loyal, you think about someone protective, you think about someone that is like, I know, Libra's pretty. So, you got all that Libra, you're so pretty. But like, she just the Libra can sometimes mask the depth, right? And she's got the Scorpio wrapper, so it's almost like she's always going to have a little bit of edge
She's
to
always
her.
got the edge. She's extremely aesthetic, though. Everything that
Hmm.
she's done has been very aesthetic, and that's played a major role in her, even the start of her career, because Halsey got started on Tumblr initially, which is the aesthetic platform. There's a very particular Tumblr girl aesthetic that Halsey absolutely nailed. And I,
Hmm.
I think it makes so much sense with it being in the 12th house. It's almost like she is the beautiful outsider. She's like
Mm.
this gorgeous, hot,
The blue
very
hair, the
the
pink
blue, the
hair.
blue, the pink, all of that. But yeah, it's alternative. It's the alternative. So she's got that Scorpio edge, and then with it being in the 12th house, being kind of hidden, um, she wasn't necessarily, she was able to capture the mainstream, but she captured the mainstream by being alternative.
Yes. And honestly, like if I were to think of Tumblr, were you a Tumblr girly?
Oh, I was
Oh,
such a Tumblr girl. I was a Tumblr girly until they took the porn away, and then I
ah,
lost all interest.
that's where the good stuff is, you know? Like, what are they
Exactly.
doing here? But it is interesting, right? Because she is a Saturn in Pisces. And when I think about aesthetic and I think about the Tumblr alternative manic pixie dream, she gives manic pixie dream girl, right? On some
Oh yeah.
level.
She's a muse, and she talks about that
Hmm.
in her current album. She's been a muse for so many male artists. She's been on tons of collaborations. But yes, continue. Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
Oh my gosh, no, because literally that's all when I think about people with prominent Pisces placements, and not that, she's got a lot of Pisces, but the Saturn in Pisces is almost like an anchor, especially as it guards her or grounds her perspective or informs her perspective, because Saturn in her chart rules her third house, which is songwriting, which is social media, which again, what she identifies with. And so she talks about the loneliness of being a muse, right? Saturn in
Hmm.
Pisces, that in of a nutshell, I think captures that. And because Saturn is in Pisces in her fifth house as a Scorpio rising of creativity, of self-expression, you can see the restriction on self-expression that she'd had to kind of internalize growing up. And she's also got a retrograde Saturn. So
Mm.
not only that, right? There's so much around reclaiming authority in a way that isn't contingent on other people, because I mean, this Scorpio stellium is intense, but she's also got a nodal axis rooted in South Node in Taurus, seventh house, and North Node in Scorpio, first house. She was always
Mm.
going to have to come back to herself. She was always going to have to figure out that she actually held the power in the relationship, not anyone else. No one around her was more creative than her, or she wasn't necessarily like giving that away, like, oh, you're this producer, or you're Trent and Atticus, right? Like you guys are making this album great, but it's like, no, I'm coming into this realization that I actually have power and I have an artistic perspective that should not be fucked with and should be valued. But do I value it myself is the bigger question.
Absolutely. And you mention, issues with authority and especially authority in that creativity with Saturn in the fifth house. And her most recent single, which came out after the newest album, so after The
Mhm.
Great Impersonator, she recently put out a song called Safe Word.
Yes.
And the whole chorus to Safe Word is like, you're not the boss of me. Yes, sir. No, sir. You're not the boss of me. I don't have to listen to you. You're not the boss of me.
That is amazing because I think that Safe Word actually came out like right around that new moon in Pisces at 9 degrees. And
Oh.
what are we just talking about here? This authority reclaiming, right? So the idea that the new moon presented a new beginning, activating that Saturn during her Saturn return is
Right
like
on
very
that Saturn.
powerful, literally. And because that was also like the opening lunation to like sorry, not the Mars, the Mercury, the Venus retrogrades in March and April that we've had to kind of digest, right? So I think she was also kind of doing the same because obviously, she's got a Mars in Cancer. This was a very, very important time for her and how she reconstructed her future around artistry, her future around motherhood, but more importantly, like her perspective and how she's actually reintroducing that into the fold.
That makes a lot of sense for her kind of comeback, having this Mars retrograde, her Mars return, that Mars retrograde. She's starting this tour right as Mars is finally leaving Cancer, is now away from her natal Mars. She's been probably doing a ton of work behind the scenes during that retrograde to
Hmm.
prepare for this tour and to get this tour going. So yeah, that's really incredible. I didn't catch that new moon was with the Safe Word release right on her Saturn.
Incredible. And like actually her chart is so dynamic. As you'll see, we'll be pulling up some key events in Halsey's life as well as we get deeper into the conversation. But it I'm always very humbled, when like you and I both like see this stuff right on a day to day, but then when it hits, you're like, oh, that's so good. Oh, it's just it just works. Astrology's real. Astrology's real, everyone.
Astrology's real. If you needed any more convincing, you're already watching this. I would
Amazing.
love to point out, well, first of all, I want to point out her Leo midheaven because
Mm-hmm.
God, is this person a performer? And I do want to point out
Mm-hmm.
that Halsey does not identify as non-binary, but does use she and they pronouns. So I
Yes.
might try to alternate as we're going through this, but they have this Leo midheaven and oh my God, the performance, especially live performance that they put on,
Mm-hmm.
they are like
The Greatest
the show.
Showman.
They're the greatest showman. They're the greatest showman. Then they're the great
Mm-hmm.
impersonator.
I love the way she kind of describes or like is the uh, like the introduction to the great impersonator, and you're like, step right up and see this. It's so circus. It is also very Brit on some level, right? Like there is like an
Uh-huh.
homage there in a different way, and with the
All eyes
lucky
on
of it
me
all.
when I step on the
Yes.
scene.
Absolutely. And she's also got her lot of fortune. She's got a midheaven in Leo, but she's also got her lot of fortune in Leo. And this is the other thing. She's got her Ceres in Leo.
Mm,
And Ceres, it's an asteroid that describes so much about the nurturing we received and what we were essentially like fed as a kid,
mm.
whether that's like programming, whether that's actual food. But you think about a series in Leo, I was taught to perform. I was raised to perform. It's hard to get that out of your psyche. It's hard to get that out of your system. And so when you think about the Saturn return, right, as this period of time that is here to deprogram as you mature, you're being asked to let go of a lot of childhood programming that really dictated your behavior. And when again you think about this great impersonator taking the mask off, but then also being so self-aware to understand what version and what subpersonality has emerged in her life as a response to trauma, and finally putting this whole circle bow on it. Ooh, this is a huge emotional processing, like when I think about this moment in time, this is what everyone in the collective should, in theory, be doing. Like, not to say suffer through life-threatening disease, but the idea that we have come at a full circle moment and we get to now redefine our stories moving forward. And I think she's doing this amazingly right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And especially with yeah, there's so much there. I would like to read that introduction that you mentioned to
Mm-hmm.
the album.
Mm-hmm.
So she introduces this album as saying, "Step right up, ladies and gentlemen. Behold the marvel of a century. Witness the uncanny ability of a woman who can become anyone, anything your heart desires, friend, lover, foe. She transforms before your very eyes, her voice and visage a reflection of your deepest dreams and darkest fears. But beware, for she is not just a master of disguise, but a spirit of transformation, slipping between the cracks of reality. One moment a beloved friend, the next a shadowy nightmare. She is the queen of the uncanny, the mistress of metamorphosis. Beware the great impersonator."
Powerful. So
What?
powerful.
What?
Like, this is an old soul masquerading in the body of someone 30 years old, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I forget that she's so young. Like when I realized we were both going through our Saturn return, I was like, whoa, she's like 1 year and 1 week older than me.
Insane.
Like,
She's
oh my
lived
gosh.
so many lives, you know?
Yeah.
And again, even if you don't exactly know Halsey or follow her music like that, which I love that she's also said, my fans, this music is not for lighthearted or everyone, right? Like if you're with me, you're with me. And that's what I expect as well in the emotional depth of my relationship. So while I think she's, been so successful at communicating that perspective through her music, we all kind of run into this, right? I'm really good at my job, but in terms of my personal life, like that same mantra does not hold. And it's how I unlearn how to do that in my personal relationships. And for her, her chart is all about agency and relationships.
Yeah, and I think her relationship with her fans has been really tumultuous.
Hmm.
And some of that is reflected with that Chiron in the 11th house. Yes, so she's
Hmm.
had very difficult relationship with her fans on and off, which is interesting because with that start on Tumblr, when she re started releasing music on SoundCloud, it blew up immediately because she already had like a Tumblr kind of fan base.
Hmm.
But she's talked about how throughout the years there's been quotes where she's felt like she hasn't had any friends, where she's been really lonely, where she's felt really alone. That quote
Hmm.
earlier about her fans can be meaner to her than anybody else. Like that's definitely a struggle as reflected in that Chiron in Virgo in the 11th house.
Hmm. But also, that Chiron does form that wide orb, 10-degree orb to Saturn. So they're still in conversation with each other. And usually for me, if you have like the transpersonal or like, the social planets, to me, I generally give a wider orb to because they are pretty influential like that. So you think about, Saturn like harsh realities, right? And sort of limiting and always like testing your authority. They're there to test her authority, right? At the end of the day.
Mm,
It's what you choose to identify with, right? When people like give you that criticism, it's because she is learning how to be emotionally self-sufficient on some, like, I don't need you to define my artistry for me. I get to define my artistry. Thank you very much. If you don't like it, this is not for you. And as a Scorpio rising, as someone with a lot of Scorpio, you are supposed to be intense and you are supposed to not be palatable, even though you have a lot of magnetism, even though you have a lot of power, even though your net can drag so many people into the fold because there's just a magnetic aura that you possess. The reality is like people want to control you. Like that's where the feedback
mm,
comes from. They're controlling you via feedback. They're controlling you via criticism. And so for her, I think it was actually almost important that she did produce this album and initially came out to that backlash because at the end of the day this album was very critically, I think this was a critical success for her. When you think about, I think Rolling Stone, she had like a bunch of articles that came out with Rolling Stone. I know she doesn't do a whole lot of interviews or written press anymore because she's taken a massive step back out of the public eye after getting all these diagnoses, in 2022 leading up into her Saturn return. Um, it is very interesting to see, she's on tour right now. She's still doing her thing. And I think she's gonna, again, usher in a new chapter where a lot of her music might actually move away from these topics, even, right? Like it's not
mm.
just the relationship, him and I without me type of vibe. It is going to be more serious and it is going to be more about my emotions, my journey, my transformation through motherhood, how I navigate these highs and lows. And I think that's incredibly powerful, especially with her Mars and Cancer moon.
Oh my gosh, the Mars and Cancer moon. Let's talk about that.
Mm,
So, a lot of the health issues that she has experienced have been related to pregnancy and then this childbirth that
hmm.
was what in 2021?
Yes, so I actually
Yeah.
have the biz. Oh my God,
Ender's chart.
Ender, I do.
Ender. So Mars Mars conjunct the moon in Cancer is already giving we've got a lot going on with parenting, with
Mhm,
mothering, with
mhm,
nurturing. Again, from that Hellenistic perspective, Mars is her malefic out of sect. So Mars is going to be the most difficult planet in the chart for her. So there's no surprise that Mars and the moon, she's had struggles with childbirth, with pregnancy. A lot of the health issues that she was diagnosed with, she makes some reference in her most recent album about the connection between her giving birth and then, well, she also says it in an interview too, that the health issues were exacerbated and really kind of exploded after she gave birth to Ender. And of course, as we'll talk about, this
mm,
was her, as far as we know, this was her second pregnancy. She had a miscarriage earlier on in her career. And again, the Saturn in the fifth house, it's not just about creativity, it's about children as well. So, struggles with having children. She's diagnosed with endometriosis. She had issues getting pregnant. The endometriosis is likely, according to her, what caused the miscarriage. And then giving birth to Ender then massively shifted her health and vitality.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you went through, that breakdown because she has been, like we say, there's a lot of stuff she's been battling. She's been battling a lot, whether it is lupus, whether it is leukemia, whether it is endometriosis, whether it is a miscarriage early on, right? Like, and it's interesting because, when I see a Mars on the moon in Cancer, that's uncomfortable. That is like permanent uncomfortable, on some level because the moon is so powerful in Cancer in her chart because the moon naturally rules Cancer, right? Like that is like chef's kiss. But as you just pointed out, Mars being the malefic aspect as her chart ruler as well on her moon, it's like she has the right intuitive and maternal instincts, but on some level, the Mars is asking her to vocalize, right? It's almost like do something with this, do something with it. Don't just like coddle or don't be passive, but like actively step into a more, I don't want to say empowered feminine, right? Because femininity has kind of been completely warped in this Pluto Capricorn patriarchal type of society. But it's the idea that like just you don't have to be hard all the time. You can be soft, but you can be soft with boundaries. You don't have, you know what I mean? Like, and it's
Hmm.
almost like she doesn't have even that opportunity to do so. It's almost like I have to learn to be hard because my
Hmm.
softness is going to get taken advantage of, as she has said many, many, many times. I think it's also interesting to note, Mars in Cancer. Mars does not really do well in Cancer, right? It's not only is it the malefic aspect in general, just Mars in Cancer, it's soggy. It has a hard time being direct with what it is it wants to say. It kind of skirts the issue. It's very good at mothering and it's very good at being passive aggressive about things, right? So
Hmm.
you hear her talk about I'm going to take accountability for my role in my relationships. It's almost like, okay, instead of almost giving this away to other people to provide for me, or like I'm overly mothering, I'm actually kind of reorienting this for myself. And that I think is a really powerful way you can rework your Mars. It's not about not helping other people. It's let me actually really nurture myself first because I have not gotten that nurturing as a kid, which also can contribute to that loneliness that she felt, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. With that being her chart ruler, it's so deeply personal for her. And man, I can only imagine. God help anyone that tries to harm that child because I could
Hmm.
imagine that she would have a crazy mama bear response with that
Oh my gosh.
protectiveness, with all
Yes.
of that. But yeah, it's also agitating and agitating to the physical body because our moon it also
Hmm.
connects to how our physical body like responds. It's our vitality. It's like our physical nature and having that much irritation, having that much inflammation, having that much agitation in the physical body, like
Hmm.
ouch, that just
Hmm.
hurts. And I can totally see and respect how her health would have been such a major issue for her.
Hmm.
Um, am I seeing that Ender's sun is directly on Mama's Moon Mars conjunction?
Oh, yes, you are. How
Oh
cute.
my gosh, how
Ah!
he came in and he said, we're going to activate this. We're going to activate this, and you're going to have to get these diagnoses. You're going to have to figure out what's actually
Hmm.
going wrong in the body. And we're going to work on fixing it because she has said that it took a couple of years, but her lupus, her rare T cell disorder, those are all in remission. And that's why she's able to go on this tour again.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, also, hello. We don't have his time, but
Mhm.
the noon chart always somehow, brings something to light. But potentially Virgo moon.
Hmm.
How cute,
The
right?
moon,
In
the moon
theory,
should have been on that day. If the day is correct, it looks like the
yes.
moon would have definitely been somewhere in Virgo.
For sure. I mean, that noon exact 17-degree hit, however, is
Ooh.
just but that's like so beautiful. The idea of a moon Chiron, like a healing balm, right? A Virgo moon, a healing balm. Although you think about it in like a different way as well, right? You think about it from the perspective of Endler, you're like, when you think about someone that has a Virgo moon in their chart, like what does that really say also, like is he going to take on the responsibility of caretaking for her, almost like take like freeing her from it, but then now he's like taking it on, and maybe is it like a lot right down the line because the Virgo moon can be very critical and very harsh and
Yeah.
yeah, overtly attentive, right?
Yeah, we can certainly hope for some healing on Halsey's part to not do, really what she experienced. She's talked a lot about her parents, that
Hmm.
being a very volatile relationship, that being a difficult upbringing. And hopefully she's done enough healing to not then continue that pattern and give again some of that trauma back down to
Hmm.
Ender.
Yeah, different. I feel like it because I can see a situation, right, with all the Scorpio and the Cancer in her chart. And, she talks about like, yeah, I get to be a single mom. And like now she has a relationship and that seems to be going amazing, right? So like there's some balance in her life. But it's the idea that, Cancer and Scorpio and Virgo, three things, the thing they have in common is this sort of like mine, like my way, like when you think about an obsessive mama bear type of energy, as you said, like, it can either turn into the greatest mom alive or like mommy dearest, right? Like
Yeah,
because you're just trying to
exactly.
like own your kid. So I can see a potential for that. I'm not saying like that's what's going to happen because I do think
Of
that she
course.
is on like such a powerful healing journey. And I mean, oh my God, like that ascendant in theory, right? Like it's not the exact time, but like again, the fact that it just like hit her son, right? Like there is all these natural energetic connections between her and her kid. And so I love family astrology because he is going like she naturally like gives him confidence. He like both of them give each other confidence, regardless of if he's actively saying anything or not, but just by his physical presence, she gets to feel more confident in herself as well.
Definitely. Yeah. And she released an album while she was, well, let's see, she released the album shortly after she gave birth. So her fourth studio album was released in August of 2021. Ender was born July of 2021. It's
Hmm.
called If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power. The album
Yes.
art was released, the album art was revealed at the Met Gala, there, or not at the Met Gala, at the Met.
Hmm.
There was a video that was released of her kind of like walking around looking at all of this art in the Met, specifically looking at images of like Madonna and Child. And then it
Mm.
reveals the album art, which is her in this gorgeous gown sitting on a throne, one breast revealed, holding her baby.
Powerful.
And she loves a concept album. A lot of her
Hmm.
albums have been concept albums, and that album was a concept album based around the joys and horrors of pregnancy and childbirth. And it also had an accompanying horror film that was
Love
based
that.
on that title, If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power. So, so much there bringing in that power, the Mars moon conjunction, the moon ruling all of that in Scorpio. Yeah, she wants power, and she'd had a really hard time accessing love for many, many years.
Especially with, when you have your South Node in the seventh house, right? Like in Taurus, it's a hard habit to let go of. It is a hard thing to be defined by other people, to want to be in relationships. It's almost like she would have a harder time staying single than actually being in a relationship. For her, that will never be the problem. Honestly, if I were her astrologer, I'd be like, girl, if someone is not giving you what you need, it's cool. You'll find someone else really fast because your chart will set it up for that. And it will always keep setting it up until you ask for better. And then when you ask for better, you start attracting those people. Like this is a chart that will always give you relationships because on some level, like you don't really know how healed you are until you get into relationships. And I think,
Hmm.
when you think about the Scorpio energy, right? Like, let me find my power, but she also still has Jupiter and Venus in the first house. Like it's still very
So closely
much
conjunct, like
literally,
absolutely on, like within mere minutes.
like, what? What? And here's the thing, she's always going to be surrounded by like really artistic people, that have a POV. And regardless, right? Because I think she's with I forget his name, but he's like a screenwriter or he's like a different kind of
Avon
artist, right?
Avon Jogia, and I know very little about him except I will say I listened to the Celebrity Memoir Book Club episode about his poetry book
Oh
that he
shit.
released, and
Stop.
they ripped into him. It was so funny. And they kept being like, ask your fucking girlfriend for advice on poetry. She's a real poet.
I'm deeply obsessed. And it's true.
It's
Halsey is
really
a
funny.
poet with a
She's a
Saturn fifth
poet. She's
house.
released a book of poetry too. She published a book of poetry at one point in her life.
Oh, really? Oh, that's very
Hmm.
cute. Her and Marina love our
The
Tumblr
Tumblr girls.
aesthetic. You know,
The Tumblr girls.
The Saturn
If
and
you're
Pisces era.
if you're beautiful and you can write a poem that a 14-year-old girl is gonna relate to, get on Tumblr.
You're
You're
in.
a
You're in.
star.
And you know what? It makes sense that she used to be like obsessed with Taylor Swift or like, early in her day there was like fan lore around Taylor Swift and Harry
Oh my
Styles.
God, yes.
But I mean, hello, the Mars Moon Cancer situation, right? Taylor also has a Cancer moon, Jupiter in Cancer. So there is like a natural direct line. So again, if you're watching or listening, and if you have similar placements with your artists, like, or I should say, more often than not, you're going to find that you have a direct energetic connection with some of your most favorite artists, like without you even realizing it, honestly.
Speaking of Taylor Swift, can we go to like the beginning of Halsey's career? We
Yes.
started kind of at the current era, which is so great, but going back to the
Yes.
beginning because I want to get to this hilarious quote about the one and only Ratty Healy. So,
It's
so
actually hilarious that that is like a common thread that her and Taylor Swift share.
it's so funny. Someone put that man in the 12th house. Get him out of here.
I mean, he this was supposed to be an interesting Venus retrograde. I know the 1975 have like a potential new album coming out, and I am still very eager to hear if it's like all going to be about like Taylor or not.
I think he's the kind of person that would, and you should do an episode on Matty Healy. I think he's the kind of person that would like totally not as like his snub in the same way that Taylor almost made everything about Maddie instead of about Joe as like her
Mm-hmm.
snub to Joe of like you don't even
Mm-hmm.
get an album. Maddie gets the album. Yeah.
Insane.
But
Actually
Halsey's
insane.
like Halsey started, so just a few facts for those following along at home. She was 14 when she started playing guitar. She was 17 when she started writing music. And
Mm-hmm.
also, when she was 17, she was hospitalized for a suicide attempt. So,
Mm-hmm.
Sun in the 12th house, she was in the hospital. That the 12th house, it's where we are confined a lot of times. So, it's hospitals, it's asylums, it's
Rehab.
being it's rehab, it's being homeless. She
Mm-hmm.
experienced homelessness. She was kicked out of her family home really young and then was living literally on the streets for a while. So being in those hidden shadow aspects of society, that 12th house sun really like popped off in her early
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you talk about 17, right? So
Mm,
every in astrology, every year does correlate to a particular theme, that gets emphasized. It doesn't mean all the themes get emphasized, but naturally more things are going to come up. And for her, that at 17, that was her sixth house year, which,
mm,
as you said, she has a Libra sun in her 12th house. The 6th 12th house axis is so much about the mental health and the physical health. And when you think about, all right, sixth house, natally, she's got nothing there. However, the ruler of her sixth house that year for at 17 would have been her Mars. Mars
hmm
would have been a very important planet for her. And so when you think about Mars ruling the blade, right? And the idea of I'm turning against myself, I'm turning against my body, I am actively trying to challenge and kill myself, right? Like, I'm not saying if you have a Mars moon conjunction, like that is what has happened in your life. But on some level, you might think about the way you try to fight your body and try to
hmm
fight your existence, right? And maybe that hasn't gone to that level, but because she is a Scorpio, Halsey is naturally always, or not a Scorpio, she's a Scorpio stellium, she's always going to mirror the intensity of what happens going to the edge for our benefit so that she can teach us that that's not what you have to do. I will go through these depths on behalf, but I will not tell you what to do, but I'm there to set the example and then heal myself away from that if she's powerful enough to do so.
Oh, yeah. The combination of it being a sixth house year ruled by her very difficult planet Mars, conjunct the moon, activating the sun in the 12th house and having that very intense Scorpio stellium, it's no surprise. I'm sure every sixth house year brings some kind of struggle or difficulty, and that one, which would have been one of her, it would have been her first like being really conscious because her
Yes.
first six house years she would have been extremely young.
Six
Something
years
probably
old.
happened within her family, but for that second sixth house year, when it's her first one, being really conscious and being kind of like an independent human being, yeah, I'm
Hmm.
not surprised that that was so intensely difficult that she tried to take her own life.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
sorry.
God she didn't succeed.
Thank God. I don't think that was ever going to be the case on some level because, at the end of the day, too, like, as much as there's cancer, if there were maybe more cancer, it'd be like, oh, maybe. But she has a lot of Scorpio. The will to live is like very strong. Like, it's a fixed sign, it's not going anywhere, even if it like tries to end itself. It's like, nope, you've got a bigger role here that you're trying to play, or that you have chosen to play in this life. They're not going to get rid of you just like that. You're going to be reborn differently, actually. So on some level, like maybe she did actually end a version of herself, right? Like she did go through some form of an ego death because 2 years later, that was when she wrote a lot of the material 19 for Badlands, right? Like she kind
Yep.
of rebirthed as a more like I think she got deeper in her emotions and was able to pull something out. I'm not no one come at me. I'm not celebrating like tragedy in order to get your artistry. But on the other side of it, like the most pained artists oftentimes produce the most compelling works of art. I'm not saying go
Yeah.
do that, but I'm just stating that's how it is.
Yeah, and thinking even back to the Lucky music video where they kind of insinuate the death of their younger version of themselves in that
Hmm.
video, and the way that, Halsey is obviously not Halsey's given
Ashley,
name. Ashley Frangipane, the very, very New
Jersey,
Jersey, the Jersey girl. She's such a Jersey girl.
such a Jersey
So
girl.
and we were both just listening to the Call Her Daddy episode with
Hmm.
Halsey this morning,
Great,
and
great episode. Really great
that's
episode.
the first time I've ever listened to any Call Her Daddy, believe it or not.
You should check
Uh,
out the Megan Fox one. That one is also very interesting.
oh, I think Megan Fox is so fascinating. And
Yes.
connection, both Halsey and Megan Fox have dated Machine Gun Kelly.
Yes, which honestly, I forgot she had dated Machine Gun Kelly. I was like talking to my partner yesterday. I'm like, oh, we're gonna do a Halsey chat. Oh, we're gonna like, I can't believe she went out with G-Eazy. What a loser. And he was like, wait, I thought she dated Machine Gun Kelly. I'm like, no, no, no. And he was like pulling it up. And I'm like, oh my God, she dated these two yahoos? Like the
She's
what?
dated so many tortured poets. It's actually crazy. And it's very Venus and Scorpio conjunct Jupiter in the first
Oh my
house. She
God.
loves those tortured soul musicians. Also, today was the first day I saw what G-Eazy looked like. And I was like,
Ugh.
that's G-Eazy?
Correct.
That's not
That is
G-Eazy.
that is the only acceptable response to
That's
finding out what he looks
actually
like.
Gerald Earl Gillum. That's Gerald Earl
Gerald.
Gillum right there. Go, you are Gerald. Do not try to call yourself G-Eazy, my guy. You're not cool.
Ashley and Gerald at the Jersey Shore
Beating the shit out of each other.
with sprinkle cookies. Because I also watch Real Housewives of New Jersey. Shout
Oh my
out Melissa
gosh.
Gorga and your sprinkle cookies. But it is also interesting because Megan Fox did come up with a book of poetry about like boys like lie or boys break your hearts or something. And again, it's a very similar vibe.
Very similar vibe. Very similar
Oh.
vibe. Oh my gosh. The muse. I would say Megan Fox has also certainly been a muse for screenwriters and all
Hmm.
kinds of things throughout her life.
Boy imaginations and there's a big conversation around sexuality, right? Like which I think is
Hmm.
also very difficult to not talk about Halsey without bringing that up. This sort of I found it really interesting. One of the things she said in the Call Her Daddy interview was also I have a very like particular set of boundaries, right? Like around my sexuality. So on the one hand, yes, I have, as you said, I have my nipple out and this is on merch and things like that. But when people come into like my dressing room as they please, it's like, no, 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 this is not the same thing. Like you don't get to see my body naked like this, but I still have consent around it. But people have a hard time understanding, like just because you say you're okay in one lane to do that, you can't do that. It doesn't give you the right to like take it in any other capacity. And that's very Chiron and Virgo, I think, too, in
Mm,
the 11th, because she has her own standards, Mercury and Scorpio. Like, this is what I want to do. But people like it can't register. It just isn't registering for people. Like, you can have nuance, you can have layers. Boundaries don't have to mean just no or yes, it's nuanced.
yeah, yeah, she's definitely had to learn a lot about boundaries and maintaining those throughout her life.
Ugh.
So let's take a look at the release of her very first single, Ghost.
Yes. I believe that was like Feb 3rd, 2014. For whatever reason, the chart is gone, but
No, so that's what I have for that is when that song be first went out to the public. So Ghost, such a good song. You're my ghost, where'd you go? I can't find you in the body sleeping next to me. This
hmm
was released on February 3rd, 2014. So she was from what I've read, she was in her period of time where she was experiencing homelessness. She
hmm
got invited to kind of an industry party. She went and met a producer. I believe it was Lido, who she did eventually then end up dating. The producer said, "Hey, like, let's go make a song for a yogurt commercial." And
Yeah.
in that meeting, she wrote Ghost. Yeah, right. I'm like, oh man, what happened in that room? Um,
Hmm.
I can only imagine. But she wrote Ghost and then put it out on SoundCloud on February 3rd, 2014. And by the next morning, the song was charting. Major record labels had reached out, and she very quickly then signed with Astral Works Records and was now a signed musical artist.
hmm I mean, we love. Here's the thing. That's such a dramatic turnaround of events, right? And I think that also speaks to her Scorpio energy. Like
Mm.
that doesn't just happen if your chart is like full of Taurus and Cancer and Virgo, okay? Like that is something that happens to like boom, Scorpio, boom, transformation, boom, you're no longer in the same timeline, you're a totally different person now.
And look at the nodes in this chart at the release. So the nodes, she was
Mm-hmm.
just finishing her nodal return. So the nodes moved the other direction, like the opposite way as the rest of the planets. So she had had her nodal return and it was getting close to finishing. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a very nodal moment, a destiny moment of like,
Mm-hmm.
here's your chance, here's your shot. This is going to change literally your entire life forever now.
Totally. And it's also the subject matter of what the song was
Mm,
about, right? It's about a toxic ex.
yeah.
And we think about what is her karma in this lifetime to do? Sort through some toxic ex material.
Yes.
So it's the idea that, like, how do I want to put it? So sometimes, I bet you get clients, right? When you like tell them, this is your karma, or this is like what you're here to do in your life, right? And they're like, God, this is like my whole life. And I'm like, yes,
Yeah,
because
duh.
this is an important lesson that we need to like really get through to you. Okay. And so you would always assume that the first go around at it is going to be a failure because you have no idea what you were trying to do. And not to say like that will always be the case, but have a lot more compassion for yourselves around the mistakes that you've made in the past because they all do serve a very important part of your spiritual journey. And for her, it like if she had wrote any other type of song, I'm not entirely sure that would have hit the same way. Like this captured what she is trying to do in this lifetime. And her medium is her art and her medium is celebrity. And so she has a big role at also again teaching people through her experience.
Oh, yeah. So much about her first many albums. I would say almost all of her albums until um, If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power, which speaks more to parenthood and motherhood, and then her recent album, which is much more personal about her health journey and everything that's gone on in her life.
Yeah.
Most of her early work is all about toxic relationships.
Yeah.
all about toxic relationships. I mean, we get the line, let's see, there's even
I was gonna
Halsey.
say her most popular song, Without Me, is literally about toxic relationships.
Yep, yep. And then Bad at Love, like classic. Talking
Hmm.
about ghosts, she wrote, the concept of the song itself is about being in a relationship with someone who isn't emotionally available. You can feel their physical presence, but the emotional one isn't there.
Mm.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
interesting. What I did was also pull up the solar arcs for
Hmm.
this moment because
Tell me
yes.
more, because I know nothing about solar arcs.
Oh yeah, so it's are you familiar with perfections?
Yes.
Okay, so solar arcs are basically perfections, but instead of, everything unfolding based on like the planet's orbit in time, this is literally you're taking a degree for a year for every planet. So everything is anchored to the sun, essentially.
Okay.
So the chart basically will move a degree a year.
Okay.
So it almost feels like a more biographical transit
Mm.
activation. So like when you actually, I think it's actually more telling when things are happening in your life or like when manifestations come true. If you pull up solar arcs and then you layer on transits around it to really, because
Mm.
when you're trying to do predictions, right? Like a lot of times, yes, it's intuitive and we take the information, but if you have a solar arc, it actually narrows down the focus of exactly how this is going to play out. So, if you see here, for example, right? Solar arc moon right on her midheaven,
Oh,
right?
wow. Oh
Powerful.
my gosh.
Chiron in Libra, solar arc Chiron in Libra on her Libra sun. Exact.
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting chills just even like ooh, thinking about
Wow.
it. Solar arc freaking ascendant on her Pluto in
Oh
Scorpio.
my God.
Right? Like all of this all hitting the way it needs to hit. And then also solar arc Saturn in Pisces at the time, right? So like
I'm curious to know when that Pisces in
mhm.
terms of the solar arc went direct, since it was
So in solar arc it
retrograde.
only goes direct.
Oh, okay. Okay. I think
Progressions will go,
I'm thinking of progressions. Okay.
yes,
I would be
progressions
interested to
it'll
see
go.
when her progressed Saturn turned direct.
Yes, actually,
I'll have to look that up.
that would be a very good thing. I like had her personal like transit calendar to look up her Saturn return like dates proper, which was really all like, a 2024 story,
Yeah.
2023, 24, 24 story. But yeah, so I just wanted to bring this solar arc up because I just found it so freaking like, oh my God, like it's undeniable, right? Like the
Yeah.
exact hits. And so solar arcs are really precise timing techniques. I definitely recommend checking it out. I did not do a good job explaining it. The TLDR again is you anchor it to the sun, a day equals a year.
Yeah.
So you get to move it
So
forward.
everything switch it, like, yeah, okay. I
Mm-hmm.
understand. I understand. I think the
Mm-hmm.
moon, the solar arc moon exactly hitting the midheaven is crazy in
Right?
terms
It's like this
of
is your moment to shine,
this
girl.
is your moment to blow up. This is your moment to be so publicly, visibly seen, because literally so many people put songs out on SoundCloud
Yeah.
every day. She put a
Yep.
song out on SoundCloud. She had enough of a Tumblr following where they started listening to it. Certainly, they started sharing it. And then industry reps started hearing it too. And they immediately started reaching out. And now, boom, you are a pop star and you're about to be world famous.
Yeah. Like in actually kind of insane. And what I love about her story too, it wasn't like she was an overnight sensation, right? It wasn't like she was a Rebecca Black or like, someone dropped something and all of a sudden like millions and millions and millions. I mean, she got poppin', but it wasn't that same level. And I think it only took her like Without Me really was her only first single on her own that hit number one. And that came like a few albums after that. So
Hmm.
for her, it hasn't necessarily been a incredible shot to success. I feel like there were, there were certain moments. Of course, Closer came out in 2016, and that was like huge for her as the lead vocalist on that song and co-writer. But otherwise, it isn't. She's not like your typical superstar as well. So I think that adds a layer of intrigue to her craft because she is a very authentic pop star, and you don't really get a whole lot of those. And I think now we're starting to, especially last summer, with the Brad Summer and the pop girlies coming through with Charlie, with Chapel, with Sabrina. It's a different kind of authenticity. And this summer with Lord, I feel like Halsey kind of belongs more in that group of women.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And to your point that it wasn't an overnight success, she was originally signed with Works, which was a smaller label. It
Love
wasn't
that
until
name.
I know, astral work so good. It wasn't until 2017 that she was, and the success of her second album, Hopeless Fountain Kingdom, which is
Mm,
considered a little more like mainstream appropriate. It wasn't until the success of that album that she was upstreamed from the smaller record label up to Capitol Records. And then she got to
mm-hmm,
start working really in the big leagues with Capitol Records.
mm-hmm,
But before that, so the first, she puts out Ghost, that goes great. She puts out New Americana next, which is one of my favorite Halsey songs. I love that song. We are the New Americana, high on legal marijuana, raised on Biggie and Nirvana, which is a
mm-hmm,
reference to the fact that she is biracial and she was raised
mm-hmm,
by these two different figures. Her father's black, her mother is white and like Italian,
mm-hmm,
which I think we can kind of see in that Libra sun. There's this balance
mm-hmm.
there. Um,
Absolutely. And the
she ref
Aquarius fourth house.
yes, 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 yes. So sort of an,
Mm-hmm,
quote unquote, unconventional to s classic American racist standards, having
mm-hmm.
a biracial child of a interracial marriage.
Yeah,
So she
yeah.
releases New Americana and after Ghost, she starts touring with the Kooks that summer. By fall of 2014, she released her debut EP called Room 93, which I learned this
Ooh.
morning. The title is suspected by fans, so probably not true, but it's suspected to be a
You never know.
reference to an unconfirmed relationship with Maddie Healy.
Dun dun dun.
And this is where the hilarious quote comes in because in response to, pop journalists asking her like, "Oh, is this about Maddie Healy?" Da da da. She says, she said about him, "We're both attracted to characters, and we saw that in each other. I spent a lot of time watching him, and he spent a lot of time loving being watched. But if you think he's the first red wine drinking pretty boy rocker in skinny jeans I've been associated with, you're out of your fucking mind."
I love her. She is, bam, that's a Mars moon. Like,
I spent a lot of time watching him, and he spent a lot of time enjoying that.
it, you know what? That confirms a lot of things that I've suspected about Matt and Taylor, right?
Yep.
Because I feel like Taylor is always going to be eager to watch from afar, and he's always going to revel in it. And they have like a
Yep.
weird underlying thing going on. You
And he's
can,
not gonna want to watch you on your record-breaking world tour that's much more successful than him.
yes, yes. You like almost the smallest man who ever lived. Like literally all these songs are literally Matt Healy. Like insanity to me that everyone can say it's otherwise. And I'm not like the biggest Taylor Swift fan by any means, but I don't know. I'm just
I
like,
am a huge Taylor Swift fan. I went to opening night of the Eras
oh
tour
my gosh.
and I
Confirm my
I
suspicions. Just kidding.
I no, I believe that's what I believe. That is in my heart of hearts. That's what I believe. I sat the first night that I was listening to the Tortured Poets Department, I
Hmm.
remember I was home alone and I got to really revel in it. And by about track 3, I was going, "Oh my God, this is about Maddie Healy. This isn't even about Joe." And I was so mad. I was so mad about it. But
You
then
were so mad.
I was like, "What? What? He doesn't deserve this." It was a whole thing. Swifties,
Yeah.
we're very emotional. We have a lot of feelings. We have a lot of big thoughts.
Yes, yes, that's
But
true.
I
But here's
thought that quote was so funny.
that is a spot on quote. That is such a spot on quote for her. And actually, you know what's interesting, bringing up this comparison to, I mean, oh my God, the Libra of it all. I'm like, oh, bring up another person to relative this situation. Um, you know how Taylor has a Cancer moon, similar to Halsey here. So very strong moons, meaning very loyal fangirl bases, I would say, right? Like the
Hmm.
feminine is a big
Hmm.
part of the fan base. But Taylor has Jupiter in Cancer, which means she's beloved by her fan base, right? Like she can't do no
Oh,
wrong in her eyes. Whereas Halsey, Mars on the moon, boom, critical. I want you to be the
yeah.
perfect mom. So you're not being perfect mom right now. And we're gonna like fucking let you know. Which is tough, which is
Mm.
tough. No one wants to be mom to everyone. Like that's not her responsibility, even though she embodies that archetype.
Yeah, that's a really astute point. Absolutely.
Mm.
So,
Mm-mm-mm.
continuing through the timeline, just to hit some major things, I think the next really important thing, and this will be a little bit of a, this whole episode is a trigger warning. Halsey's whole life is a trigger warning.
Major
Um,
trigger warning,
Poor girl.
yes.
But I think it's important to take a look at the chart for her performance at the Vivo Lift show, which I don't know what that
Hmm.
means. I don't know what the show was about,
Is
but
it
on
like the Vivo, like the YouTube like Vivo
it's
channel?
surely that. I just don't know
Yeah. Whatever
what
happened to
this.
that?
It's still a thing. When I was watching a lot of her music videos, even the Lucky music video was like a
Vivo?
Vivo
Oh,
video, yeah.
interesting.
But on August 11th, 2015, she does a performance, and prior to this performance, she started miscarrying a pregnancy that she had, and then was essentially actively miscarrying during this performance. She said that she just threw on an
Mm.
adult diaper. She in reflecting on this performance, she talked about how this was one of the moments where she realized she was giving way too much to her career because she's always wanted to be a mom. She talks about
Mm.
how she had always wanted to have kids, she'd always wanted to be a mom. So this was really difficult for her to go through, and she describes this as the
Mm.
angriest performance of her life. So again, that Mars in Cancer,
Mm.
that anger, that rage at knowing you're losing a wanted child, and having to go out and give your all to fans that maybe you have a bit of an antagonistic relationship with already. Like it's
Hmm.
horrible. It's awful. It's terrible that she had to go through this, and it's also a
Hmm.
major part of her story, which is why I wanted to include it in this timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. I think here's the thing. It would be Halsey, if you're watching, you know it'd be a disservice to talk about you and your Scorpio and your intensity and everything that you've gone through without honoring it for how powerful that was. And as much as it was incredibly difficult, like looking at the chart, right, you can kind of like that was a Venus retrograde in Leo,
Mm,
which again, like, when I think about her suicide attempt, at 17, 12 years later, 29, which is right around her Saturn return, which is when she got all these health things again, right?
hmm
And when I think about, oh, we had a Venus retrograde, very intense Venus retrograde summer in Leo in the summer of 2023, which really she started to, I think, in the lead up into 2024 for her was very brutal. I think the Rolling Stone article said Feb and March was when, she like I think got dropped by her label, or she left her
mm,
label, like she then got all these illnesses, right? Like there was just a lot. Her Saturn return was so incredibly brutal, but that also was coinciding with another Venus retrograde in Leo. And so now we see the first sort of real Venus retrograde experience that we know her as this performer. She's literally performing with a miscarriage. And it's echoing exactly that line in Lucky where I had a kid, I've been gone for a year, and people ask how am I fine? And that was the biggest lie, right? I'm completely butchering
yeah.
that, but you dropped that in
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah. And what's interesting is also talking about that Venus retrograde. So it was summer 2023 that we had that most recent Venus, or
Yeah,
the
the
previous Venus
Leo.
retrograde, the
Mm-hmm.
one in Leo. And so 2023 is when her relationship with the father of her child ended. That is when they separated, was in 2023. So that's interesting that that Venus retrograde, it certainly came in and destroyed her. So that was when she
Mm-hmm.
became a single mom at her premiere. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
Interesting. I mean, I also just couldn't help but notice this Venus retrograde is squaring Pluto, right? When you
Ouch.
think about a
Ouch.
literal, especially Pluto in the first, like
Yeah.
physical form in my body, and there being an inward, like almost like what I will say, and maybe this might not actually be what happened, right? But she just said this was the most angry performance she's ever done. And I would argue that anger transferred even before the performance began.
Mm,
There was some feeling of discomfort, there's some feeling of anger, and I think it turned inward because remember what we said about the Mars and Moon. I will naturally be more inclined to attack myself before letting the rage come out externally. And
mm,
so when you think about then having like a baby as part of that, right? Like, and again, this is not to blame anyone, but it's just
mhm.
kind of talking through the energies that I see. It just felt like, the anger, there was a place for that anger to go outside of the body. But unfortunately, in this case, this turned inward, and then there was this miscarriage, and then this performance, all in all, like very brutal stuff.
Yeah, and regardless of whether that impacted the pregnancy and the miscarriage, I think that that inward directed anger is a really great point because some of the diagnoses she's received, like lupus, I believe is an autoimmune condition.
Selena Gomez has that too, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah.
exactly. And so one of the things that yeah,
I was gonna say Selena also has a 12th house sun, just FYI.
there's also a connection to Benny Blanco in here later, but
Yeah.
so all these, what do they say? Like Hollywood's a cesspool. Like,
Yes. Yes, Hollywood
so
is the
she
biggest
didn't
cesspool.
date Benny Blanco, but she was on his debut
Yes.
his debut single. So,
Yes.
but that idea of, autoimmune conditions are much more common in women, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot I attribute that as someone who also has dealt with autoimmune conditions that it's that instead of directing rage and anger and pain and upset outwards, we turn it inwards. And then our immune system picks up on that and we literally physically start attacking ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
endometriosis was also a huge aspect of this. And endometriosis is such a like inflammatory condition. There's a
Totally.
lot of inflammation in the pelvis. And that's what Halsey themselves attributes the miscarriage to was the
Mm-hmm.
endometriosis. And there
Mm-hmm.
was later surgeries and things to help rectify that that then did allow them to get pregnant and actually carry a child fully to term later on.
Yeah. That's so, I mean, it's so interesting because obviously when you do, and not to like keep harping on her cancer placements, right? Because like cancer is beautiful energy. It's not just, endometriosis and like all these like other things, right? But I think this is showing a different side of cancer, right? Where what happens when you really don't care for yourself. Like this is what happens. And, emotionally also.
Hmm. Yeah.
And when I think about Mars again, ruling her sixth house of health, of work, right? The idea of like, I'm pushing through, but like, is this a time for me to push through? And it actually is also very interesting because I think about how she has these moments come up in her life. And I think the universe is just so indiscriminate. Like we may think some things feel horrible or, but the reality is like it's offering us things that help reshape our narratives and on our spiritual journeys. And if I think about her G-Eazy performance, um, at Good Morning America, where she found out that he had just cheated on her right before she goes on stage. Which do I even have that? GMA. Oh my gosh. I had it earlier, December 14th, but it literally like it just makes me think, okay, like what would have been the best decision at this point? If you were
Hmm.
very upset, would it have made sense to be like, no, thank you. I'm gonna go protect my peace or say what I need to say, right? Because during the performance, she was literally shooting him like dirty looks and stuff, but it's like, is that a comfortable place for you to really be in? Is that necessary? With the Leo midheaven, it's hard to take the mask off, right? But at what
Yeah.
cost?
Yeah, I mean it's tough when you have this is your job, this is your career, this is your obligation to do this performance. And what would the backlash have been had she not,
She would
especially
have definitely gone backlash.
with the Chiron in the 11th house and all of that, folks could have easily dogpiled on her. So I almost, give her kudos for getting up on stage and pulling the Stevie Nicks and just eyeing him because that song, gosh, the lyrics to that song are so funny. It's like he's out of his head, I'm out of my mind. Like we've got that love, the crazy kind.
Yes.
It's very like we are intense, batshit crazy lovers. And she later then went on the first time that she was on SNL, she both hosted and was the performing artist on SNL. And she performed without me.
Mm-hmm.
And during the performance of Without Me, she was singing kind of like a cappella or like solo. It was like an acoustic version of that song, and the backdrop was allegedly what like the apology that G-Eazy gave her and like lists of all the places that he had cheated on her. So she took that performance, like the Good Morning America, she took that moment and flipped it to a really incredible SNL performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I just pulled up the GMA release, but I just pulled up the transits for that date, December 19, 2017, which clock it, 2017 was the last year we had another Venus retrograde in Aries as well, right? Not to say like this was
Uh,
happening during then, but the Venus retrograde in Aries happened at the beginning of the year, and then you kind of see the rest of the year play out from it, right? Like the
hmm.
consequences from it. And so, I mean, very, very interesting. We've got like a Neptune. We've got, well, one, first of all, Capricorn moon in the third house. Like, she is out there, she is like communicating, but at the same time, all this Mars activation on her Scorpio as well. Like almost like
Yeah.
because anything with Scorpio and a
That
Mars
was
in
her Jupiter
Scorpio,
return.
yeah, hell of a
That was
Jupiter
her Jupiter
return.
return.
Hell of a
Wow.
Jupiter turn. So when people say Jupiter returns can bring blessings, they sometimes might mean they're blessings in disguise. And
Yeah,
they might not
yeah.
actually be the blessing you thought you wanted. So it is a blessing, but just not
That
in the
probably
way.
didn't feel like the greatest blessing.
I mean, she went very viral. That video, I think, went so viral after, right? Because again, she
Hmm.
was so expressive. It was all over her face what had happened, and he's off like pretending nothing happened. Eh,
Gerald.
Gerald!
Gerald. Shame. Shame, Gerald. Oh my gosh. I want to, get later in her timeline, I do want to
Mhm.
mention her debut album. I want to talk a little bit about
Yes,
Badlands that came out
Badlands.
in 2015, mostly because I have a joke that I've been preparing for weeks since I
Oh,
started
please,
researching this.
please tell me.
Oh my gosh. So Badlands, I love Badlands. This is probably when I discovered Halsey, was when Badlands came out. I didn't realize that I was such an early adopter of Halsey until I started researching her timeline and was
I
like,
feel like
"Oh,
you should be her president of her fan club, you
I
know?
could be. At
I
this
think
point I
you
could
could.
be." So I'm like, I don't want that responsibility. The Chiron will come to bite me at some point. So Badlands came out August 28th, 2015. This is her debut studio album. It features some really great singles that I have written down somewhere. It has Strange Love. Um,
18, 2015, you said?
no,
What date again? That was a different
August
date.
28th.
28th.
August 28th, 2015. So she wrote all of the songs were written at age 19, and she
Mm-hmm.
described this song. Well, she described that the title of the album is a reference to her mental state when she was writing these songs. So we know
Mm-hmm.
there was the suicide attempt at 17. She was hospitalized for 17 days. And, we don't bounce back from that immediately. A lot of her teen years were really tumultuous. So Badlands was written kind of about that mental state. And so when I learned that fact, when I discovered that fact, it really made me start to wonder, what does it mean about me that when I was in college, I could only hook up
Listen.
or have sex with that album on? Anytime I was hooking up with someone in
Interesting.
college, I put Badlands on in the background. And I was like, I don't know what that says about me, but I don't know if I
Giving Blue
like it.
Valentine. It's giving very Blue Valentine.
It's giving ruled by Mars conjunct Pluto in the eighth house in Scorpio.
It's so interesting because Badlands is a 1973 Terrence Malick movie.
Okay.
Um, so it's interesting because she's very referential, right, as
Hmm.
well. So I mean, that's a very intense movie. So it makes sense. It
It's an
does make
intense
sense.
album. Let's see, I think I have some good. The genre is electro pop, dark pop, alternative pop. She did have Mercury was exactly conjunct her Chiron, I believe. Is
Oh,
that not
August
showing in this?
28th. Well, it was conjunct her sun in the north. Mercury was conjunct the North Node in the sun, August
Oh,
28th,
okay.
2015.
Cool, cool.
As long as I have the right date there.
No, you should have the right date.
August
Maybe my
28th.
notes are just odd. I might have been looking at when a single was released.
I mean, there's still like I said, Mercury technically is still on her sun, applying to it with the North
Mm,
Node.
hmm.
That's like a wow there. It also dropped on a Jupiter Cazimi.
The Jupiter Kazemi. There you go. And one of the lines, this gives Jupiter Kazemi. What sign was that in Virgo, her
Virgo.
11th
Hmm.
house? She writes in the song Control in this album. I'm
Oh,
big Control, right? Control, Strange Love, this whole album. How did she described it as being Oh, I'm losing all my quotes. That's fine. But this line in Control says, I'm bigger than my body. I'm colder than this home. Okay, Virgo. I'm
Mm.
meaner than my demons. I'm bigger than these bones. And all the kids cried out, please stop. You're scaring me. I can't help this awful energy, Scorpio stellium. God damn
Mm.
right you should be scared of me. Who is in control? I'm well acquainted with villains that live in my bed. And then in another refrain, she says, I'm well acquainted with villains that live in my head. And the
Mhm.
the line that follows is they beg me to write them so they'll never die when I'm dead.
Mm.
Whoa. Whoa, 19-year-old
Wow.
old. Okay, that's some Scorpio stellium shit right there.
That's so powerful because here's the thing, we keep talking about 19 and in astrology there are certain ages that correspond to major shifts. Let's just put it that way, right? Like we have a Saturn
Hmm.
return, as we talked about, Halsey's finishing it up right now, 28 to 30. But at 19, she was going through her waxing Uranus square. So
Mm.
usually, you think about Uranus in the context of like a Uranus opposition, right? Like in your midlife quakes between, 39 and 45, right? But usually at that Uranus opposition, you kind of think back to what happened at 19 to 21 when you had your waxing Uranus square, because those urges that come out at that point later on in life are going to most likely harken back to this moment. And a waxing Uranus square for a lot of people means I go to college, I break away from my family, I finally get introduced to all these different things, I get out of control. But for her, she didn't go to college, right? And so, this is a waxing Uranus square, sixth house of work, third house of songwriting.
She
The
became
I
the breadwinner in her family. That's what she talked about in Call Her Daddy.
There we
She
go.
became a touring musical artist and she became the breadwinner of her family.
Hmm. A lot of
Major, major.
responsibility, a lot of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she's got, a Saturn ruled third house, right? Responsibility will always kind of be informing her choices, or she views the world through that lens. And even though, it's an artistic lens, it's still Saturn, it's still heavy, there's still weight. And Saturn in Pisces can also kind of, I think, if you're not the master of your ship, you're going to be a passive player. And who's really running the ship then?
And who's running the ship? Who's running the show? A few more just lyrical
Hmm.
things. If you are a Scorpio, if you have heavy Scorpio placements, go listen to Badlands. You're gonna like
Hmm.
it. In Strange Love, she talks about secrets. She says, I'm gonna write it all down, I'm gonna sing it on stage, but I don't have to tell you anything. That's the beauty of a secret. You know you're supposed to keep it.
Mm.
Who is in control?
12th house sun, 12th house sun. I mean, actually, now that I think about it, it wasn't just a Mercury North node, it was Lilith in Libra. And we just
Mm,
also came out of a Lilith in Libra last summer.
mm,
I think we just went into Lilith and Scorpio recently. Last summer, Lilith moved into Libra, which also is interesting, right? Because that was the summer she then also revealed again about like her illnesses and her album. So Lilith moving into the 12th house for her is always going to, I think, bring up everything that she has repressed, right? Because Lilith in Libra, the shadow side of it is like all the
mm-hmm.
things that I've kept personal and held my cards very close to my chest, or I didn't want to say anything to disrupt, but now on some level in the 12th house, I'm letting that go. So I can
Yeah.
actually share.
Yeah. Yeah. The relationality of it all.
Yeah, it's again, she is so interesting because you just said, if you have heavy Scorpio, go listen to Badlands. But I would argue, like, I mean, her whole discography, right? Like, if you even
Yes.
look at just the titles of every single album, she's got five, but every single one.
Ghost. Okay, so that was her first single, first song or EP, Room 93, Badlands, Hopeless Fountain Kingdom, and then Hopeless Fountain Kingdom is great. And there's a really good Leo Midheaven line in Hopeless Fountain Kingdom. That's where she just
Mm.
sings the refrain, I can put on a show. I can put on a show. Don't you see what you're finding? This is heaven in hiding. Hello, Leo
Mm.
Midheaven and Sun in Libra in the 12th house. This is heaven in hiding. I'm going to put on a
Yes.
show for you, but there's so much below the surface. Oh
Hmm.
my gosh. Manic is the third studio album. Fourth studio
Mm-hmm.
album is If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power. And then the fifth is The Great Impersonator.
Mm-hmm.
All so deeply scorpionic. And
Mm-hmm.
Libra at the
And
same.
Libra. Yeah. It's also funny because even with her birth time, right? Like I was looking at the notes around because it's an A-rated chart, but it's from memory. And I think
Yeah.
one of the quotes was, I don't even like my birth chart is lying or something. Like she's even, it's like, oh, my birth chart is like an impersonator, right? Like
She
so
had she had told herself a lie about her birth time, I think is what the
mm,
story was. She
mm,
used to be really excited to say that her birthday was 9/29 and she was born at 9/29,
there
but
we go.
she was born at
Yes.
9/26. Like she later had to go out and like redact it because her ascendant is so close to the edge of Scorpio Libra.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
she had she'd been telling people the wrong time and then on Twitter because she used to be super prolific on Twitter and connecting really closely with her fans, speaking directly to them. And so she
Yeah.
clarified that.
Yeah, and you can see that with the cancer, right? Like literally, I'm so nurturing. I want to take care of my fans are great. But when I think about the Chiron in Virgo in the 11th, like I'm here to learn discernment and I'm here to learn that I don't have to actually I know I get to interact with who I want to, not because I feel like I have to. And the moment that relationship becomes one of service to you, then that becomes a bit of a problem. So if I'm operating from a place of generosity and I want to give you access to this, amazing. But if you are asking for this access, it's a different story that she's learning to get comfortable around.
Oh yeah. And as you said earlier with the nodes, and it's the same with Saturn, she's just coming out of her Saturn return. We don't grow into these stories until much later in life. Halsey is
Hmm.
still very young, and there's so much more to be experienced and learned along the way.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think I would say the last thing about the Saturn return, because I'm excited for you to do a card pull on Halsey. But when I think about people with 11th house placements, especially in the context of their Saturn return, you are only going to really come into your voice and feel comfortable about your sense of belonging at around 34. So it's the idea that you do go through the Saturn return, and the Saturn return is really about the fifth, sixth, and seventh houses in astrology, right? Like self-expression, my sense of fun, children, responsibilities, work, mental health, routine, and then relationships. And the year after the Saturn return, you get into your eighth house year, and that is intimacy. And that's actually like, okay, wait a minute. I'm actually getting into the depth of stuff. And so for her to have gone through all this intensity up front, I kind of feel like hopefully that won't be a very intense eighth house year. Hopefully that means it's more like marriage or more like, stabilizing a relationship in a different way or getting a different like collaboration, something there, right? But again, she's still evolving. And it's again up into 34 when she really maybe feels, okay, I'm claiming this formally for myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All the collaborations. She's collaborated with so many artists, and she's the muse.
But that's so interesting, right? Like I almost feel like her collaborations, not to say like she's not successful, but as a Libra, you know that really the key to success is collaboration. And you can't run away from that. And so for her, it's almost like she had to come into her artistic power so that she can magnetize other people on her level. It's not about trying to
Hmm.
find people better than you, it's you being that person you want to, I guess, find so that other people then get magnetized to you. Like that's how you can kind of grow together rather than feel like, oh, I'm dependent on you or I'm in service of you or, because there's a very big emphasis on the other in her chart. And so as long as she always feels empowered in her creative direction, she will find the people to collaborate with, but not the other way around.
Yeah, it has to be an equal partnership for sure. I would never listen to the Chainsmokers if I wasn't listening to Closer.
Yeah, literally. Like I hate that it's with the chain smokers,
I
but my
know.
that
It's
song
such
is
a
so
good
good.
song. It's so good. And then East Side with Khaled is the one that was
And Bene Blanco.
that was the produced by Benny Blanco.
Hmm.
That was his debut single. That was Benny
Hmm.
Blanco's first single, and now look, he's like this huge, huge, huge. He's produced like almost everything that's currently like on air right now. But I love that song.
His lore is very interesting because obviously we have a Benny Blanco Selena episode, which spoiler alert, I have my doubts. But I, you know, I just have to say it. I feel like it's interesting because that was his debut, but he has been also writing, right? Because he did write on Britney Spears and
Yeah.
Womanizer and that Circus album. And it was kind of like, oh, or maybe not Womanizer, but the Circus album, which was the first album again under Britney's conservatorship. Like, and if I think about who does Halsey come into proximity with, right? And who she attracts into the orbit. I'm not saying Khalid is a bad person. Actually, Khalid I really like. And Khalid, bless you. But you think about the Chainsmokers. Not that they're terrible people, but
Machine Gun
Machine
Kelly,
Gun Kelly.
G-Eazy, Maddie Healy.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying anything other than, oh, that's
I'm saying that these
interesting.
are all problematic people.
Oh, these are all problematic people, but I'm not,
Yeah,
I'm allege with anything Benny
allegedly.
Blanco.
Oh, I'm excited to hear that episode. I'm excited to see that episode. Do we want to pull some cards for Halsey?
Yes, please. Is there, I mean, we did a card pull for Katy Perry, which was past,
Mhm.
present, future, just to see where she's come from, where she's at, and where we're headed. But I defer to you, the Tarot Queen, on what you feel like is a good pull for Halsey today.
I laid out three cards here that
Fabulous.
are it's this is a common spread, but it is one that I personally learned from my good friend Rose, Tarot by Rose 333. She's the Reiki Queen of Tucson. I love her. So, what is there to know? What is there to grow? And what is there to let go?
Ooh, I love that.
So for Halsey, what is there to know? We have the Three of Pentacles, and the Three of Pentacles gives a lot about there's so much to grow. There's so much to continue building. I think this is with her most recent album and this current tour that she's on, it is time to like really get to work. So I don't believe the tour has actually started yet. I think it's just about to start. So
Mm-hmm.
it's time to really like Pentacles is so much about labor and work and like doing the just do getting your hands dirty, getting in the nitty gritty. So
Mm,
it's time to get to work. It's time to rely upon your community. It's time to rely upon the people who have skills that are different than yours so that you can all combine those skills together to build something that's greater than what you could do on your own.
mm-hmm.
Really a good time for building. I do think my personal belief is that her career is going to continue to take off
Mm-hmm.
and that it's going to look completely different than her pre-Saturn return career.
Mm-hmm.
So, pre-Saturn return career has been so much music about relationships, about strife, about struggles. It might still continue to be about the struggles that she faces, but I think that it's going to I would like to see it continue to stay in this really personal vein
Mm-hmm.
and this like really true artistic expression that the great impersonator has kind of brought forward.
Mm-hmm. I think that would make sense with Pluto, especially in Aquarius, and that activating her whole Scorpio stellium, like over the next 20
Oh
years,
my
right?
gosh. Is
There's
that
same with Katy
is
Perry.
oh, they're both gonna have to this is the square, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna have to
Mm-hmm.
go through all of those Pluto squares.
Katy Perry is currently going through her Pluto square. Pluto's already squaring her Mercury and will be squaring her ascendant, which actually makes me wonder if she is going to get pregnant again.
That's really
Admittedly,
interesting.
especially Jupiter Cancer moving through her ninth house coming soon. And after this Mars in Cancer, I do feel like a lot of people were in kind of like weird preparation for pregnancy because we were healing our bodies, we were healing a lot of mother wounds. There was just a lot coming up.
She froze some of her eggs. She froze her eggs and then
Oh,
she did say
okay.
that this pregnancy was fully planned. So there was literal prep the endometriosis surgery, like she did go through prep
Mm-hmm.
and planning to have this pregnancy, absolutely.
Yeah, I can see, especially as Pluto keeps moving through her fourth house, like that's just I mean, that is so striking.
I bring up the squares from Pluto because I have a Libra stellium. And
Hmm.
so Pluto moving through Capricorn squared everything in that Libra stellium. And that
Juicy.
sucked. I hated that. I didn't want to live for so long.
But look at
Um,
you
Look at
now.
me now. We're good now. We're good now. We're fine.
We're
No,
leading
no need to worry
revolutions
about
in
me.
our own town.
Exactly. So that makes me think like, wow, Pluto in Aquarius is going to be major, major for her. It's going to square that Mercury. It's going to square that ascendant. It's going to square the Venus-Jupiter conjunction. There's going to be all these crazy squares. So yeah, there's a lot to unearth there for
Hmm.
sure for her. And then
Hmm.
culminating in 20 years with that Pluto square.
Jesus.
What
Can't
is
wait.
there what is there to grow for Halsey right now? And I think this does sit firmly in the space of like motherhood and caring for her child and also caring for her inner child because one of the things that we know
Mm,
is and when you start to have children, your own childhood trauma likes to kick back up. So we
juicy.
have the Six of Cups coming up here. And so the Six of
Mm,
Cups just speaks so much to inner child healing. It speaks so much to caring for the children in our lives. So really focusing on that aspect. Of course, she's got the tour coming up. So that's going to kind of, career is going to take precedence for a little while over parenting. But I think that is the inner child work, the healing her own inner child. And I could see, I mean, she's going to go on tour, and some of the songs that she's going to be singing are going to be from this new album. And this is a deeply, deeply emotional album. So
hmm.
I would imagine that even just performing some of these songs that's going to be a healing experience for her.
Yeah. Oh, I just got chills. Like karaoke therapy is a real thing. And if you're a singer and you get to do this on stage, it's like a catharsis, I would
Oh
imagine.
yeah. Oh, the line, I think that I should try to kill my ego because if I don't, my ego might kill me. The line, all dogs go to heaven, but what about a bitch? What about an
Hmm.
evil girl left crying in a ditch? I can't wait to scream that at the
Mm,
show.
mm, 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 mm.
What is there to let go for Halsey? We're ending the Saturn return. We're finishing out this kind of first entry into adulthood. What is there to let go? We have another cups. We have the Seven of Cups. Letting go of the confusing, tumultuous relationships that have led her to not choose herself in every moment. The Seven of
Mm,
Cups requires us to choose ourself, to put ourselves first, to choose our soul self at all times, and to not get distracted by all of the other things. And one of those other things that this card speaks to is relationships, thinking that we can find ourselves in the other. She does need to
mm,
have the reflection of others to help her identify herself with that Libra sun. Libra sun here, hello, I get it, but making sure that they're choosing themselves at all times.
mm. I love that this was that a snake in the middle of this Seven of Cups card?
It's like a sea monster. It's like kind of could be an octopus, could be some kind of sea monster making its way out of one tentacle, making its way out of that
That's so
bottle.
Scorpio. It just feels like that Scorpio. It feels like her breaking
Sea
out of the
monster?
12th
Yeah.
house. And the seven, of course, and I think about the association with her seventh house, right? Like
Mhm.
and I think about that, even in that card, it's just so visual. Her Saturn in Pisces, the boat, the ship in the
The
bottle.
ship, the hopeless fountain kingdom. There's like a little kingdom right
Yes.
here. All of these like aspects of maybe all these like past aspects of herself
Mm-hmm.
that need to be kind of evaluated and potentially even put back on the shelf of like, I'm not that person anymore. I've grown, I've changed.
Yeah.
Putting that back on the shelf and evolving into this version that has matured and grown up.
Oh, beautiful. I love that so much. Halsey, I hope you love that too.
Halsey, I love you. When she commented on my post, I literally replied and was like, if you need a massage therapist, I'm a licensed massage therapist, that's my day job. If you need a massage therapist to come with you on tour, hire me. I would
Not
we would
only
be
that, a witch. Hello, she was looking for a witch when I think there was like a quote in her Rolling Stone article where she was like, I was literally out there trying to look for a witch to help cure me. Like, what the F was happening here?
I will do I can do energy work. We'll read your natal chart. We will make sure that you're doing things on good transits. I'm like, this is my goal as a massage therapist is to someday be hired by a touring artist. So I'm like, Halsey, take me on tour. I'll
Yes.
quit all of my other jobs and go with
You are the most
you.
important thing. You deserve this. I love
Oh my
that. I love
gosh.
that. Well, I think we have well, I would like to say we did that some justice. That was like a very solid deep dive,
I
if I
think
do say
so.
so myself. But why don't you remind people where they can find you, what you offer, and also like what you are currently leading, because these are all very important things. I will include these at the show notes below, but from the horse's mouth.
Awesome. Thank you. So, first of all, thank you so much, Tasha, for having me on. This has been such a joy. This is the first time I've gotten to do like a big astrology deep dive publicly. I just enrolled in Austin Coppock's year one Fundamentals of Astrology program.
Love
I'm
that.
hoping to complete all 3 years. We'll see how that goes. So, astrology is my favorite language to speak, and it's an honor to be able to speak it here with you about one of my favorite artists. You can find me primarily on Instagram at Persephonic777. That's Persephonic. My website is persephonictarot.com. I'm primarily a tarot reader. I'm transitioning into being an astrologer. I'm not currently offering any services at the moment, but I do talk about these things online. And I host a podcast called Past, Present, Future Cast, which Tasha was a wonderful guest on. So, that is a podcast where we take a look at the creative journeys of artists and creatives, and we root that conversation in a tarot card reading. So, I'm trying to give folks a little bit of information about tarot, how I interpret the cards, while also sharing the amazing people that I know and what they do. And lastly, I will say if you are reading this and you have any connections to Tucson, Arizona, or the Sonoran Desert, I accidentally activated the Mars Pluto opposition in my hometown by being an incredibly martial figure who gets mad about things. So we have some kind of big developers and companies that are consolidating a lot of power in my town, and we're trying to go after and attack, eliminate in many ways some local businesses, or at least displace them. Uh, and I did not take kindly to that. So I started a petition. The link is in my bio at Persephonic777 to make some noise, to get some justice, to bring some power back to the people, because that's what Pluto and Aquarius is all about. So power back to the people. I'm leading some. I'm organizing some social change at this moment in my hometown of Tucson, Arizona.
Set the double Aries Libra stellium.
That's
Bless.
the double Aries Libra stellium with the Aries South Node exactly on my ascendant. So I
Mm,
do like to stir some things up, make some good trouble at times.
we love that. And I think that is such a powerful example of what Neptune and Aries and Pluto and Aquarius can do in this era. On, at a certain point, yes, there are so many things, terrible things happening around the globe, but it's the idea that what change can you really step up to and take initiative around that can actually affect greater change and a sense of community. So I applaud and am so incredibly proud of you. And if you are
Thank
in
you.
Tucson, Arizona, please support, because we do not need another Live Nation situation in our
No.
orbit. Thank
Not
you.
in my little small town. Absolutely not.
Not in
Chani
any
said,
town.
I'll maybe it can stay in Phoenix for now because it is a Live Nation show that I'm going to for Halsey.
Only
So
big cities allowed.
only big cities. It is a monopoly. But yeah, Chani said, get ready, Aries risings, to be famous when Neptune entered Aries. And, a few weeks later, I was on my local news station. So I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's go. That Libra stellium needs to come out and play. But again, thank you so much for coming on and chatting. Halsey, leading the discussion. I feel like I learned a lot about her through this process. So I hope whoever is tuning in does the same. Like, subscribe, share with your Astro besties, and I will be back next week with yet another deep dive. Bye.